I should have known my life was about to split in two the moment I heard her laugh. It rang across the ballroom of the Davenport Hotel, bright, sharp, deliberate, and every head within 20 feet turned toward me. My best friend was holding my fiancé's hand, and she was laughing at me. The annual Spring Harbor Children's Fund Gala had always been my event. I chaired the architecture committee that redesigned their community centers. I secured sponsors. I planned layouts, lighting, flow. Every centerpiece, every silent auction display, every stage angle. I had touched it. And that night, under a chandelier that refracted crystal light across 1,000 champagne glasses, I stood alone in a custom midnight blue gown, watching my future dissolve in real time. Her name was Vanessa. She had been my maid of honor. 2 months earlier, she had cried with me when Daniel proposed. She had hugged me and whispered, "You finally won, Liv." Now she stood at the edge of the dance floor with my ring still on her finger. Not hers. Mine. I remember the exact way Daniel avoided my eyes. Cowardice has a posture. It curls the shoulders. Tightens the jaw. It pretends confidence while searching for escape. He leaned toward her, murmured something, and she laughed again, softer this time, as if sharing a private joke about me. I walked toward them. You do not run from humiliation. You confront it standing straight. "Vanessa," I said evenly, "why are you wearing my ring?" She tilted her head, studied me like I was an architectural flaw. "Oh, Liv," she sighed as though I were naive. "It fits better on me." The audacity nearly knocked the air from my lungs. Daniel stepped forward. "Olivia, let's not do this here. Here. At my gala. At my foundation event. At the hotel I personally booked." "Then where?" I asked. "Because you moved out of our apartment this morning without speaking to me." His silence answered. Vanessa smirked. "You were working. Again." There it was, the old accusation. My ambition. My hours. My refusal to shrink. I had met Daniel 5 years earlier at a development pitch hosted by Morrison Urban Projects. He was charming, attentive, a venture consultant with a quick smile and curated humility. I had been 32, freshly promoted to lead architect. He told me he admired powerful women. What he meant was he admired access. For 5 years I funded his consulting expansions. For 5 years I defended his inconsistency to friends who raised quiet eyebrows. For 5 years Vanessa, my college roommate, my confidant, reassured me that every relationship had seasons. I see it clearly now. They were studying me, my network, my influence, my donors. And that night, in front of half the philanthropic board of Seattle, they chose their stage. "Olivia," Vanessa said sweetly, "you'll recover. You always do. You're strong." The subtext, "You'll be fine. I've taken what I wanted." Daniel finally spoke. "We didn't plan for it to happen like this." Of course they hadn't. Cowards rarely plan for confrontation. "How long?" I asked. Vanessa shrugged. 3 months. 3 months. That meant while I was finalizing vendor contracts, while I was redesigning Harbor West Youth Center, while I was selecting bridesmaid dresses with her. "You've embarrassed yourself," she added lightly. "You're making a scene." That was when something inside me stilled. Not shattered. Stilled. There is a moment when grief burns into clarity. I looked around the ballroom, at donors, city officials, trustees whispering behind gloved hands, and I realized something critical. This humiliation was temporary. My name was permanent. Vanessa and Daniel were social climbers. I was the latter. And ladders can be removed. I did not cry. I did not argue. I stepped back, smoothed my dress, and said, "Enjoy the evening." Vanessa blinked. She had expected tears. Daniel looked almost relieved. They mistook composure for weakness. That was their final error. I left the ballroom and stepped into the cool Seattle night. The valet rushed forward, but I waved him off. I needed to walk. The skyline glittered across the water like a promise I had nearly forgotten. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Messages from board members, from acquaintances, from reporters who had apparently already caught wind of the spectacle. Vanessa thrived on public drama. I thrived on strategy. By the time I reached my penthouse overlooking Elliott Bay, I had already made 3 decisions. 1, I would not beg. 2, I would not explain myself publicly. 3. I would rebuild without them and better. The next morning, I learned what humiliation truly costs. Daniel had withdrawn nearly $80,000 from our joint wedding account. Vanessa had resigned from her marketing position at Harbor West. And an article appeared online titled, Philanthropy's Power Couple Splits at Charity Gala. Power couple. The irony was surgical. I sat at my kitchen island, coffee untouched, reading every word. Anonymous sources speculated about career imbalance, emotional neglect, and whispers of incompatibility. Whispers. Vanessa had always loved whispers. I closed my laptop, and then my phone rang. Olivia. The voice was calm, measured, unmistakably controlled. It belonged to Adrian Keller, founder of Keller Infrastructure Group, the man who had donated the largest single contribution in Harbor West history. The man Vanessa had once called intimidatingly disciplined. Yes, I said. I was at the gala, he replied. Of course he was. I'm sorry you had to witness that, I said automatically. A pause. Then, I wasn't referring to the spectacle. My hand tightened around the phone. I was referring to the mistake they made. His tone carried something I couldn't immediately name. Not sympathy. Not gossip. Assessment. They underestimated you, he continued. And you know this how? I asked carefully. Another pause. Because I've been watching your work for 3 years. The air shifted. Adrian Keller was not a man who spoke casually. You built Harbor West's East End project under budget and ahead of schedule, he said. You negotiated supplier contracts personally. You outmaneuvered 2 competing firms. I was doing my job. No, he corrected calmly. You were leading. Silence filled the line. Then he added, I'd like to meet. For what purpose? To discuss something larger. I ended the call uncertain whether I had just been offered opportunity or scrutiny. Either way I accepted. I did not know then that Vanessa would attend that meeting uninvited. I did not know she believed she could replace me professionally the way she had replaced me romantically. And I did not know that within 6 months, she would freeze in the doorway of another gala, staring at the man I married. But that night, as I stood alone on my balcony watching ferries cross the Sound, I made myself one promise. No one would ever use my ambition against me again. They wanted to laugh? Let them. Because I had just been given something far more powerful than revenge. I had been underestimated. And underestimated women build empires. 3 days after the gala, I walked into the glass headquarters of Keller Infrastructure Group, wearing charcoal gray and composure. I do not attend meetings emotionally unarmed. Adrian Keller was already seated when I entered the private conference room, sleeves rolled precisely once, tablet aligned parallel to the table's edge. Controlled. Intentional. Observant. He stood. Olivia. Mr. Keller. Adrian. I sat. I did not fidget. He did not waste time. I'm launching a redevelopment initiative on the South Waterfront. Mixed-use, community-forward, privately funded. That alone was seismic. Seattle's waterfront projects were political minefields. Public scrutiny. Environmental pushback. Media obsession. And you're telling me this because? I asked evenly. Because I want you to lead it. The words landed quietly, but heavily. I chair a foundation board and run a design division, I replied. You have firms competing for your contracts. I don't want a firm, he said. I want a leader. There was no flattery in his voice, just calculation. Before I could respond, the conference room door opened. Vanessa stepped inside. She wore white. She always chose white when she wanted to look victorious. Oh, she said lightly. I didn't realize this was a closed meeting. Of course she did. Adrian didn't look at her immediately. Miss Clark, he said after a beat. This discussion was scheduled privately. Vanessa smiled the way she did when she believed charm solved structure. I heard there might be marketing opportunities tied to the waterfront expansion, she replied. Daniel mentioned. There it was. Daniel. Leaking information. Adrian finally met her eyes. Your fiancé is not involved in this project. Her smile thinned. I assumed. That would be unwise, Adrian said calmly. Silence tightened the room. Vanessa shifted tactics. Olivia's brilliant, of course. she added, placing faux warmth in my direction. But she tends to overextend. Stress management isn't her strength. I let her speak. Adrian didn't blink. Miss Clark, he said, voice steady, if I require insight into Olivia's capabilities, I will assess them personally. She flushed. There are moments when power reorients in a room. This was one. Vanessa realized she was not the upgrade here. She was the interruption. Well, she forced a laugh, I just wanted to introduce myself. You have, Adrian replied. She left 5 seconds later. The door closed softly. I exhaled once. Does she know, Adrian asked, that you still control donor strategy at Harbor West? No. Good. He slid a proposal across the table. Equity percentage. Leadership authority. Autonomy. It wasn't a contract. It was partnership. I invest in capability, he said. Not spectacle. He didn't mention the gala. He didn't need to. I read every line carefully. No ego traps. No hidden leverage. Why me? I asked finally. He leaned back. Because you didn't react that night. My eyes narrowed slightly. You observed, he continued. You absorbed the hit without imploding. That tells me you build long-term. And if I decline, I'll find someone else, he said without hesitation. But I'd rather not. There it was. Respect. Not rescue. I closed the folder. I'll need 48 hours. You have 24. I almost smiled. When I left the building, my phone buzzed again. Daniel. Voicemail. Liv, we should talk. Vanessa might have misread the room earlier. She's just trying to position herself professionally. Position herself. As what? Replacement architect? Replacement bride? I didn't call back. That evening, I reviewed the waterfront proposal twice. By midnight, I understood something clearly. This wasn't revenge. This was expansion. And if Vanessa believed she had stepped into my future, she was about to discover she'd only stepped into my shadow. I do not make decisions from wounded pride. I make them from alignment. The next morning at exactly 9 o'clock, I called Adrian Keller. I'll accept, I said. There was no audible surprise on the other end. Good, he replied. Be in my office at 11. We move quickly. We, not I. That mattered. By noon, I was reviewing waterfront zoning restrictions, environmental impact projections, and funding structures that most firms would need 6 months to untangle. Adrian worked without theatrics. He asked precise questions. He listened fully to my answers. When I disagreed with one of his development timelines, he didn't bristle. He adjusted. You push back efficiently, he noted once, scanning a revised projection. Most people posture first. I don't posture, I replied. I calculate. A flicker of approval crossed his expression. Respect builds quietly, brick by brick. By late afternoon, news traveled. Vanessa texted first. So you're working with Adrian now? Interesting choice. Interesting. I didn't respond. Daniel called 15 minutes later. Liv, are you seriously partnering with Keller? He asked, tone edged with something between panic and entitlement. Yes. You didn't even tell me. You're not involved. A pause. You know I've consulted on 2 of Keller's mid-level expansions, right? I did know. I also knew he had been paid as a subcontracted analyst, not a strategic partner. You're welcome to apply for vendor review, I said evenly. Like everyone else. Silence. Then irritation. You're doing this to make a point. No, I corrected. I'm doing this to build. He exhaled sharply. Vanessa thinks. I don't care what Vanessa thinks. The line went quiet. For the first time in 5 years, I heard him without influence. He wasn't powerful. He was dependent. And dependency resents independence. 3 weeks later, the first internal strategy session was held at Keller Infrastructure's executive floor. Developers, legal teams, environmental consultants, and uninvited but present, Vanessa. She sat 2 chairs down from Adrian, dressed in another pale shade of triumph. Ms. Clark has offered to assist with brand strategy. One of the junior managers explained cautiously. Adrian didn't look at her. We are not in need of branding, he said calmly. We are in need of structural integrity. The dismissal was surgical. Vanessa stiffened. I have strong donor connections through Harbor West, she countered. Adrian finally turned his gaze toward her. Those relationships, he said evenly, were cultivated by Olivia. The room stilled. Vanessa's jaw tightened. She had assumed she could migrate into my network the way she had migrated into my relationship. But networks require credibility, and credibility cannot be stolen. It must be built. After the meeting, Adrian and I remained behind reviewing updated feasibility drafts. You handled that cleanly, he said. I didn't handle it at all, I replied. You did. I prefer clarity over spectacle. So do I. There was a quiet understanding forming between us. Not romantic, not yet, but strategic. Aligned. You're aware, he added carefully, that your former fiancé is attempting to leverage past project familiarity for access. I assumed he would. I don't reward opportunism, Adrian said. Neither do I. That evening, I returned to my penthouse and stood before the windows overlooking Elliott Bay. The city had not changed. But I had. 3 weeks earlier, I had been publicly humiliated. Now I was leading a waterfront expansion that would redefine the city's skyline. Vanessa thought she had taken my future. Daniel thought he had upgraded. They both misunderstood something fundamental. My value was never in proximity. It was in capability. And capability compounds. 2 months into the project, Adrian invited me to a private investor dinner. Not as an employee, as a partner. The invitation was addressed. Olivia Carter, co-lead, South Waterfront Initiative. I held it in my hands longer than necessary, because titles matter. Not for ego, for positioning. I did not yet know that Vanessa would attempt one final maneuver. And I did not yet know that the next gala, 6 months later, would end very differently than the last. But I could feel the shift already. Momentum does not shout. It accumulates. And mine was building. Success attracts pressure. 3 months into the Waterfront Initiative, investor confidence was strong, environmental approvals were progressing, and construction modeling was ahead of schedule, which meant Vanessa grew restless. Daniel grew nervous, and rumors began circulating. The first article appeared on a regional business blog. Is Keller Infrastructure moving too fast? Sources question leadership experience. Leadership experience. Anonymously sourced. I did not need proof to recognize Vanessa's tone. She specialized in insinuation, never accusation. Adrian forwarded the article without commentary. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Talk to me, he said. They're trying to create doubt before the next funding round, I replied, positioning me as emotionally unstable after the gala. Are you? No. Good, he said simply. Then we address it structurally. That was one of the first things I learned about Adrian Keller. He never reacted publicly. He responded strategically. 2 days later, an invitation circulated for a pre-investor cocktail reception, hosted independently by a marketing coalition. Vanessa's name sat prominently on the advisory line. Daniel's consulting firm was listed as a strategic partner. They were trying to insert themselves into the narrative. If they couldn't own the project, they would attempt to influence perception. I attended. Not to argue. To observe. The rooftop venue overlooked the bay. Intentional symbolism. Vanessa thrived on visual messaging. She wore emerald silk this time. Daniel hovered half a step behind her, speaking too loudly to potential investors. When she spotted me, her expression shifted from surprise to performance. Olivia, she said brightly. I wasn't sure you'd come. You're discussing my project, I replied calmly. It seemed appropriate. Our project, Daniel corrected quickly. I held his gaze. No. A flicker of tension. Vanessa leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. You don't have to prove anything anymore. You could have walked away gracefully. Graceful. She meant silent. I'm not proving, I said. I'm building. She studied me. You're making this personal. No, I replied evenly. You did. Her smile faltered. That was when Adrian arrived. He didn't announce himself. He simply entered the space, and the energy recalibrated. Conversation shifted toward him naturally. Investors straightened. He approached us deliberately. "Miss Clark," he acknowledged. "Adrian," she replied smoothly. "We were just discussing how dynamic the waterfront opportunity is." "I prefer discussing opportunities with individuals contractually attached to them," he said. "Direct." Daniel attempted to interject. "I've consulted on related infrastructure models." "You have submitted no formal proposal," Adrian interrupted calmly. "Until you do, this is speculation." Silence stretched. Vanessa recovered first. "We're simply fostering enthusiasm." "Enthusiasm," Adrian said, "without authority creates confusion." He turned slightly toward me. "Olivia, the Halpern Group is here. I'd like you to walk them through the revised shoreline resiliency plan." "Not him. Me. Public positioning." Vanessa watched it happen. I stepped away without another word. For 45 minutes, I presented to the Halpern Investment Consortium, outlining flood mitigation architecture, community revenue modeling, phase development returns. I did not mention the Gala. I did not mention betrayal. I spoke about structure, longevity, sustainability. When I finished, Mr. Halpern nodded once. "We prefer leadership that survives pressure," he said. "I agree," I replied. Across the rooftop, I could feel Vanessa's stare. She had expected fracture. She got composure. Later that evening, Daniel cornered me near the bar. "You're pushing too hard," he said quietly. "Adrian will replace you once this stabilizes." "Is that what you would do?" I asked. "That's how power works." "No," I corrected softly. "That's how insecurity works." He exhaled sharply. "Vanessa believes there's still room for collaboration." "With her?" I asked. "With us." There it was. They still thought proximity equaled access. "You chose," I said calmly. "Live with it." I walked away. 2 weeks later, the Halpern Group committed 30% of the next funding phase. Publicly. With my name attached. The same business blog that questioned my experience ran a follow-up headline. "Carter solidifies waterfront initiative with major investment win." Vanessa stopped smiling at events after that. Daniel stopped calling. But something else changed too. Adrian's distance softened. Not in sentiment. In trust. He began including me in board-level strategy sessions. He deferred to my judgment publicly. He asked my perspective privately. Respect once earned compounds faster than reputation. 6 months after the gala where I had been humiliated, another invitation arrived. The annual Harbor West Autumn fundraiser. Same ballroom. Same chandeliers. Different positioning. This time my name appeared as keynote contributor. And Adrian Keller would be attending as primary sponsor. Vanessa's marketing coalition was also listed. Of course it was. Cycles complete themselves. And some rooms deserve revisiting. Not for revenge. For resolution. The Harbor West Autumn fundraiser felt smaller the second time. Not physically. Strategically. I wore black. Not mourning. Precision. Adrian arrived beside me. Not ahead, not behind. Aligned. Conversations shifted the moment we entered. Whispers resurfaced, but this time they bent toward curiosity, not scandal. Vanessa stood near the silent auction display. White again. Predictable. For a brief second when she saw us together she smiled, the old practiced expression. Then she noticed Adrian's hand resting lightly at my back. Not possessive. Intentional. Her posture stiffened. Daniel stood beside her, less polished than before. His suit fit poorly. His confidence thinner. "Olivia," Vanessa said, voice controlled. "I didn't expect you to come with company." "I'm not company," Adrian said calmly. "I'm here to support my partner." Partner. The word landed with quiet force. Vanessa blinked. Daniel looked between us, calculation failing in real time. "You're dating now?" he asked. Adrian met his eyes. "We're building something substantial." I did not elaborate. I did not need to. When I took the stage later that evening, the ballroom quieted fully. 6 months ago, I had stood humiliated under these lights. Tonight I stood funded, positioned, respected. I spoke about community restoration, about waterfront resilience, about leadership under pressure. I did not mention betrayal. But I did say this. True strength isn't proven when things go well. It's revealed when they don't. Across the room, Vanessa's smile had disappeared. Daniel looked small. When applause rose, it was steady, earned. As we stepped down from the stage, Vanessa moved toward us one last time. "You look happy," she said carefully. "I am," I replied. She glanced at Adrian, then at me. And for the first time since the gala months earlier, she froze. Because she finally understood something she hadn't before. She hadn't taken my future. She had removed the distraction. And I had upgraded. Outside, beneath the cool Seattle night, Adrian offered me his hand. "You handled that cleanly," he said. "I told you," I replied softly. "I build long-term." He studied me for a moment. "No," he corrected gently. "You build wisely." And this time, when the city lights reflected in the glass behind us, no one was laughing. Success changes how people look at you. Power changes how they approach you. 3 weeks after the fundraiser, Adrian invited me to the waterfront site at sunrise. No press. No board members. No spectacle. Just unfinished steel framing against the sound and the early light cutting across Elliott Bay. He stood with his hands in his coat pockets, studying the structure we had designed. "This will outlive us," he said. "It's built to," I replied. A quiet pause stretched between us, not awkward, not charged. Measured. "You know," he continued, "when I called you after the gala, it wasn't purely professional." I didn't interrupt. "I've watched how you operate under pressure for years," he said. "Most people crumble or retaliate. You recalibrate." "And that impressed you?" I asked. It aligned with me. Alignment. Not chemistry. Not infatuation. Alignment. He turned toward me fully. "I don't make impulsive decisions," he said. "I don't build temporary structures. Not in business. Not in life." I held his gaze. "Neither do I." His expression shifted, not softened but clarified. "I'd like to make this partnership permanent." The word settled between us. Not dramatic. Deliberate. "You're proposing," I said calmly. "Yes." No kneeling. No audience. No performance. Just two architects of their own lives standing beside steel beams that would shape a skyline. "You understand," I said carefully, "that I won't shrink for anyone." "I would never ask you to," he replied. "I'm asking you to expand with me." That was the difference. Daniel had wanted admiration. Adrian wanted collaboration. "On one condition," I said. He raised an eyebrow slightly. "We build everything transparently. Financially. Legally. Structurally." A hint of approval crossed his face. I already had the documents drafted. Of course he did. He handed me a slim leather folder, prenuptial agreement, asset clarity, equity protections. Not protection from me. Protection for both of us. "I don't fear capable women," he said. "I secure them properly." I reviewed it carefully. Balanced. Mutual. Respectful. I closed the folder. Yes. No tears. No trembling. Just certainty. The wind off the water carried the faint sound of construction crews beginning their morning shift. Steel met steel. The city woke. And this time, when I chose a man, I chose one who built beside me, not on top of me. Vanessa learned about our engagement through a business announcement. Not social media. Not gossip. Official press. Her reaction, I was told later, was silence. Daniel attempted to call once. I did not answer. Some doors deserve closing quietly, and some futures deserve entering without apology. This one was mine. We did not announce the wedding date publicly. We selected it deliberately. 6 months after the night Vanessa laughed at me. Full circle. The ceremony was held on the completed South Waterfront Terrace, the first finished section of the project we built together. Steel and glass behind us. Water open in front of us. Only close family. Board members. Key partners. No spectacle. No vulnerability to hijack. I wore ivory silk. Structured, architectural, intentional. Adrian wore charcoal. When he took my hands, his grip was steady. "I choose you," he said plainly. "Not because I need you. Because I respect you." That mattered. When it was my turn, I did not promise obedience or forever in soft cliches. I choose you because you build, I said. And because you never tried to diminish what I build. Simple. Clear. Binding. The reception was intimate but elegant. No press. Until someone leaked it. By evening, photos began circulating online. Olivia Carter marries Adrian Keller at waterfront project she co-leads. Vanessa saw it. Of course she did. She arrived at the venue just before the reception ended. Uninvited. White dress. Again. Security hesitated. She still had residual access through Old Harbor West credentials. I saw her before she reached us. Her steps slowed. Because she saw him. Not across a ballroom this time. Not at a distance. She saw the ring. She saw the partnership announcement banner. She saw the investors congratulating us. She saw Daniel nowhere beside her. And she froze. Not dramatically. Not theatrically. Completely. Her expression shifted from calculation to realization. She had thought she was trading up. She had thought she was stepping into my future. Instead, she had stepped out of it. She approached anyway. Congratulations, she managed. Her voice was tight. Adrian extended his hand politely. Miss Clark. Professional. Dismissive. Controlled. You move quickly, she said to me. No, I replied evenly. I move decisively. She glanced at the skyline behind us, the skyline that now included our project. You always land on your feet, she said. I don't land, I corrected softly. I climb. For a moment something flickered in her eyes. Regret. Or maybe envy. Then she noticed the wedding band, platinum, simple, permanent. Her gaze lingered on it. And that was when it happened. She went very still. Because she understood something undeniable. The man she helped humiliate me over had lost access to everything. And the man I married had just doubled my reach. Daniel texted me later that night. I didn't think you'd remarry this fast. I did not reply. Speed is irrelevant when the structure is sound. As the reception wound down, Adrian and I stood alone at the edge of the terrace. The city lights reflected against the water. You knew she'd come, he said quietly. Yes. You handled it without emotion. I handled it without ego, I corrected. He studied me with quiet admiration. No one will ever laugh at you in a room like that again. I looked back at the skyline, at what we built, at what we secured. They can laugh, I said calmly. It just won't matter. And this time, when I walked out of a gala, I did not walk alone. I walked married to a man who understood that partnership is not possession. It is power shared correctly. Vanessa did not attend another Harbor West event after that. Some exits are voluntary. Some are inevitable. Hers was both. Marriage did not slow us down. It sharpened us. Within a year, the South Waterfront Initiative was featured in national architecture journals. Keller Infrastructure expanded into 2 additional cities. My name appeared beside Adrian's, not underneath it. Shared leadership. Structured equity. Transparent power. Vanessa, meanwhile, attempted reinvention. She launched a boutique branding firm. She reintroduced herself at events as formerly of Harbor West. But credibility, once fractured, doesn't reset easily. And then came the audit. It began quietly. A routine financial review tied to past Harbor West allocations during the months before my departure. Discrepancies surfaced. Marketing retainer payments. Consulting transfers. Vendor invoices linked to Daniel's firm. All approved during Vanessa's brief advisory tenure. Small amounts. Repeated. Patterned. I did not initiate the investigation, but I did not obstruct it. Harbor West's board requested documentation. Adrian insisted on full transparency. When Vanessa received the inquiry letter, she called me for the first time in nearly a year. I didn't steal anything, she said immediately. I didn't accuse you, I replied calmly. This is retaliation. No, I said evenly. This is accounting. Silence. You could make this go away, she added. There it was. The old assumption. That I would protect her. Like before. I don't shield people from consequences anymore, I said. The line went quiet. 2 weeks later, Daniel's consulting contracts were terminated pending review. Vanessa resigned from her firm before formal findings were released. No criminal charges. But reputation erosion is quieter, and often more permanent. At the next Harbor West annual report presentation, a new compliance policy was announced. Stricter oversight, third-party auditing, conflict of interest clauses. My name was cited as co-author. Not vindictive, preventative. Afterward, as guests filtered out of the ballroom, yes, the same ballroom, Vanessa stood near the exit. Smaller this time, less curated. When our eyes met, there was no laughter, no smirk, only recognition. "You won," she said quietly. I stepped closer. "This was never a competition," I replied. She searched my face, perhaps for gloating, perhaps for softness. She found neither. "You really loved him," she said after a moment. "Yes," I answered honestly. "And now?" I glanced across the room where Adrian was finishing a conversation with the board chair. "Now I love correctly." Her shoulders lowered slightly. Not defeat. Understanding. Sometimes the harshest reckoning isn't public exposure. It's realizing you misjudged the wrong woman. That night, Adrian and I returned home to a skyline permanently altered by steel and glass we had placed there. "You didn't celebrate," he observed. "There's nothing to celebrate," I said. "Accountability isn't revenge." He nodded once. "You've changed," he added. "No," I replied. "I've clarified." He smiled faintly. And for the first time since the night of the first gala, I thought about Vanessa without feeling anything at all. Not anger, not hurt, not superiority, just distance. And distance, when chosen, is peace. Success is loud. Peace is quiet. A year after our wedding, the waterfront project was complete. Restaurants filled the lower promenade. Families walked the terraces at sunset. The skyline reflected our design back at us every evening like confirmation. Adrian and I stood on the upper deck one evening, watching the city move without us needing to manage it. "That used to feel impossible," I said quietly. "What did?" he asked. "Standing still." For years I had equated motion with worth, achievement with security, validation with survival. He studied me. "You don't need to prove anything anymore," he said. "I know." And for the first time I meant it. Vanessa moved to San Diego that winter. New market, new circle, rebranded. Daniel attempted 2 more ventures. Neither stabilized. I heard these updates the way you hear distant traffic, present but irrelevant. One afternoon, I received a short message from Vanessa. "I misjudged you. I'm sorry." No performance. No manipulation. Just simple words. I read it twice, then replied, "I hope you build something real." No bitterness. No invitation. Closure does not require reconciliation. It requires release. That night, Adrian and I hosted a small dinner on our terrace. Investors, architects, city officials. As the evening ended, one of the younger developers approached me. "I remember the gala last year," she said carefully. "I thought you were done." I smiled slightly. So did they. What changed? I looked out at the skyline. "Nothing," I said. "I just stopped negotiating my value." She nodded, absorbing it. Good, because that was the real shift. Not marrying well. Not securing funding. Not public redemption. It was internal alignment. Later, when the terrace emptied and the city quieted, Adrian wrapped an arm around me. "You ever think about that first night?" he asked. "Yes. And I considered it honestly. I'm grateful." "For humiliation?" he asked lightly. "For clarity," I corrected. Vanessa's laughter had sounded cruel, but it had also been catalytic. Without it, I might have remained comfortable. And comfort is often the slowest form of self-erasure. I turned toward Adrian. "They froze because they thought I lost," I said softly. He brushed his thumb along my hand. "They froze because they realized you were never the one behind." Maybe. Or maybe they froze because success, when rebuilt stronger, forces comparison. And comparison reveals truth. As we stepped back inside, the skyline behind us steady and permanent, I understood something fully. The man she stole was never my future. He was my filter. And the man I married didn't replace him. He revealed what partnership actually looks like. Vanessa laughed once in a ballroom. Now she lived with the echo of it. I live with the skyline. And that is more than enough. 2 years after the night Vanessa laughed at me, I returned to the Davenport Ballroom one final time. Not for scandal. Not for defense. For expansion. Harbor West had grown beyond community centers. We were launching a citywide mentorship and development grant for young women in architecture and urban design. My name was no longer attached as former fiancé. It was listed as Olivia Carter Keller, Chair, Waterfront Development and Philanthropic Trustee. Titles are not vanity. They are record. The ballroom filled slowly, donors, city leaders, young professionals watching carefully. Some remembered the first gala. They should. History gives contrast. When I stepped to the podium, the room quieted fully. I want to speak tonight about structural integrity, I began. Not of buildings, of character. I did not reference betrayal. I did not reference Vanessa. I spoke about underestimated women, about resilience without spectacle, about refusing to shrink after public failure. I saw nods ripple across the room. After the speech, a group of young architects approached me. One asked, "How do you recover when people try to humiliate you publicly?" I held her gaze. "You don't recover," I said. "You reposition." Simple, clear, actionable. Adrian watched from the back of the room, not hovering, not interrupting. Support without control. That had been the difference all along. As the evening wound down, I stepped toward the balcony doors and let the night air steady me. Behind me, applause still echoed faintly. In front of me, the skyline glowed, altered permanently by something I helped build. Vanessa was not there. Daniel was not there. They had become footnotes. And footnotes do not shape skylines. Adrian joined me quietly. "You've closed the loop," he said. "No," I corrected gently. "I've expanded it." He smiled. "You don't think about her anymore, do you?" I considered the question honestly. "No," I said. And it was true. Not because I had won. Not because she had lost. But because my life no longer required comparison. The night she laughed, I thought I was losing everything. In reality, I was losing misalignment. That is not tragedy. That is correction. As we left the ballroom together, not fleeing, not proving, I felt something steady settle fully into place. No bitterness. No performance. No unfinished business. Just clarity. She froze when she saw who I married. But the real shift happened long before that. It happened the moment I stopped asking for permission to be powerful. And once you reach that point, no one else's laughter has volume.